Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have Professor Aubrey, and got a nice bit of trivia here for you.
Okay.
There is a recording that John Lennon made in the late 70s in his home. His interest at first was to, recite into the cassette recorder and someone else would transcribe it, his life story. But he got bored. So he started talking about a bunch of other things. And one topic that he started talking about was Bob Dylan and the musical direction he was going in at that particular time. Now, the album that Lennon was probably referring to was Blood on the Tracks. I believe it's the first album of Dylan's Christian work.
Yeah.
And let's just say Mr. Lennon was not a fan. Also, there's another part of this recording, and I hope to be able to find it on YouTube, because when I heard it was funny in not necessarily in a disrespectful way, even though it was a parody. Okay, because it's like, yeah, John Lennon could pretty much be an asshole at times, but he still respected Dylan. But there was one point to where he was mimicking, I guess, Dylan's early days, with a lot of lyrics and using like two chords going back and forth. And what Lennon did was he did the two chords back and forth thing on his guitar while reading a newspaper article and singing the sentences in the newspaper article like a Dylan song.
Wow. Did he do it in like Dylan voice?
I believe so. I did, yeah. I mean, as much as Lennon could do, but just it was the same cadence in everything. And when I heard it before in the past, he was ribbing Dylan, but I think it was a well-intentioned rib. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe Dylan actually wrote a song making fun of the Beatles. I think it was him making fun of the song Norwegian Wood from Rubber Soul.
Oh.
And just kind of Dylan did the same thing to, in this case, John Lennon, that Lennon did on that recording. But the reason I bring that up is that we are going to be talking about more Bob Dylan ever since we saw the movie A Complete Unknown. Myself, I've dived more into Dylan's catalog on YouTube Music, and I know you've fired up some Dylan albums, whether it be on YouTube or in other places. So what we wanted to do this week is talk about our 5 favorite Bob Dylan songs. Disclaimer as always, when we talk about our favorite, it's our favorite. We're not saying it's the best in the world. This is not a scientific study.
Nope.
That's right. So what I thought we would do here is have the professor start us off with a short little ditty that Dylan wrote and sang.
A short little ditty.
Yeah, your first choice. What's your first choice?
Oh, great. I was like, do you want me to sing a song?
Well, let me get my guitar, folks.
Yes. Okay, so my first choice.
The short little ditty.
The short little ditty. Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. So this is a song that is like, what, 15 minutes long? Like, it's really long.
It was most of my bus ride home.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think the song ended by the time we got to 24th in Alberta.
So how long was that?
About 11 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very long song, and the reason I love it so much is the tune, which is good. I love the imagery of sad-eyed lady of the lowlands. Like, can't you just picture that? Like, what comes into my mind is like an Arthurian, marshy kind of place that a beautiful lady in a beautiful dress is in a boat, and something tragic has happened to her, and so she's crying. The thing about the song, though, is that that's not in the song. And what is in the song is beautiful poetry. And Dylan always considered himself more of a poet, certainly than a rock and roll star. So things like, with your mercury mouth in the military time, with your voice like rhyme.
Well, I can interject here. I think, for me, it's like even though Dylan went beyond folk, he still took that folk sensibility. Because I was thinking about it today, and I would say folk music in a lot of ways is similar to Shakespearean trained actors in the sense that, for folk music, it's not about necessarily the creation of new music, but hey, if you create something new, then, you get behind it. But it's also studying the work of the past as well, much more so than other music genres. I would say heavy metal doesn't really do that. The metal as it is today may sound a little different, but it's still going off the same basic format that was created in the 70s with Ozzy and Black Sabbath. And something Dylan has pointed out, that you could say the same for bluegrass.
Oh, yeah. There's standard bluegrass songs that every bluegrass band plays.
And
Now,
most,
there are bluegrass bands that write their own music, but it's not considered real bluegrass most of the time, like Allison Krauss and Union Station and some other famous people that are contemporary bluegrass.
yeah. So the reason I bring that up, like this song, I don't know if I'll put it on one of my playlists. Let's put it that way. But he was telling a story there. It's not. It's not that I'm saying it's bad. I'm not saying that. But it was just using song in a much different way than I normally am attracted to as a music listener. So to your point, yes, I could see him, creating this story of this woman in this world that he created. But for me, when I was listening to it, I was like, okay, done with the story.
When? Like when the song was over, you
When
were
it's
done with the story?
Yeah, like you are with most stories when it's over. And, I mean, some stories can still live in your heart.
Yeah, well, what did you visualize when you were listening to the story?
To be honest, I didn't really visualize anything. I was listening to it. It wasn't one of those things where I was thinking about life and everything else while music happened to be playing in the background. But it was just more of hearing him sing the lyrics. And because that's usually how I interact with my music, just sing at me. Boom. Okay, great. It's not
You're
necessarily
a more emotional listener.
exactly. I mean, similar to the types of movies that I watch. It's very much similar because, like, in terms of like hardcore dramas, it's not that I don't like them. I have plenty that I enjoy, but I am about the emotion. I am all about the bombast for what I like. And for me, I want to feel the music. I guess not take notes on it like I'm writing a book report.
Speaking of book report, I had to go over and get my Bob Dylan lyrics book.
And I'm glad I covered for you.
Thank you very much, because I wanted to look at each song as we talked about them. It's 524 pages. It was published in the 90s, so could be significantly longer now. It goes through 1975. No, it doesn't. It goes past 1975.
I think the cover said 85.
85. Okay. And then it's falling apart, and it's got my name in the front of it. 1991, May, the
The
peace
peace
sign.
sign. Everybody did that in 91. The Gulf War, became popular again because remember they did that remake of A Piece of Chance where like Tom Petty and MC Hammer got to do their famous duet.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, for my birthday that year, I had a giant cookie, a giant chocolate chip cookie, a big round one, with a peace sign and icing. I was way into it. I was such a hippie in high school. It was
Mm.
ridiculous. So anyway, so it's like each verse is about a different person. So it's not at all telling the story that I see in my head. It tells a completely different story. And it's mostly imagery, so it paints a picture. And the picture, I guess, that it painted for me was that one of the Lady of the Lake, basically.
Oh,
Anyway, anyway, so that's my thoughts about that one. And then we have four more. I get four more to talk about, so I'm super excited. So Tim, why don't you go ahead with your number one?
do it now. Yeah, I'm excited. Like every time we've talked Dylan, every single time you're like, Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Indeed. So, my first choice here, I get to tell a little story. I love to tell stories like this. In the early 90s, they had a concert at Madison Square Garden, the 30th anniversary Bob Dylan tribute concert, where a bunch of artists came on stage and sang a bunch of Dylan tunes. I think it was for charity or something like that, or it may have just been a regular concert or
Maybe
anything.
it's his birthday.
It might have been that too, but it was an early 90s thing. It was a couple weeks after Sinead O'Connor ripped up the picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, which is important because she played at that concert in New York City. And like, I always wondered why she did that because New York, I think it's safe to say, is a big haven for Catholic people, and this was a message in the early '90s that they weren't going to want to listen to. So it's like she should have expected that response, but it was cool to see Chris Christopherson give her a hug and say, "Don't let the bastards get you down."
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and apparently they struck up a friendship from there. There are duet videos of Christopherson and Sinead O'Connor singing one of his songs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there is
Was
that.
that post?
After that, yeah, it
Yeah,
was like a late '90s type of deal. But
that's cool.
yeah, but the song in question that I'm including here is "My Back Pages." Now, to be fair, the original version from this came from the album "Another Side of Bob Dylan." I am not implying that this is the superior version of the song, but hearing it again gave me the memories. And safe question to ask if I'm not proclaiming to be the biggest Bob Dylan fan in the world. Why did you listen to that? And I say listen to because it was a pay per view event, but this was still in an era uncabled where if you did not have the pay per view equipment, you would get the scrambled signal. So visually, you couldn't see what was going on, but you could hear everything. So for like every WWE pay per view, it was on, and I just listened to the audio in the background. But I again didn't. I was probably less of a Dylan fan than I am now, but even at that time, I recognized this is Dylan. This is a chance to see people like Tom Petty, Neil Young, Eric Clapton, George Harrison all get together and sing his songs. And yeah, I mean, like at the time, I was probably more sarcastic in terms of his voice. Like, who hasn't? Yeah, ooh, it's a very, very, very basic joke. And with the look on your face, I think it's like, yeah, but when you hear it over and over and over again, it's not that funny.
It's really not funny, and it hasn't ever been funny. The only funny time is when my uncle sings Christmas carols pretending to be Bob Dylan, which still pisses me off that he's making fun of Bob Dylan's voice, but it's just so fun to do
Yeah.
that I don't get mad about it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Uncle. Anyway, one thing I did learn about this song, which I learned in terms of doing research for this episode, is that the song in question is considered by most to be his thoughts on growing disillusioned with the folk movement. Think of the chorus. I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. He was trying, I guess he understood that he didn't have the fight or the desire to fight the folk movement in the folk movement like some of his contemporaries, like Joan Baez, who was arrested plenty of times for protesting in causes she believed in. And I think he was at this point just stating, I want to be a singer. I want to sing songs. I want to write songs that appeal to me. And I love that about him because, like, it showed in the movie that there were some people in the folk movement that were kind of snobbish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Dylan, if anything, is not a snob. And, the fact that he was able to write something like this to, just kind of do the whole I'm free type of deal. I really respect it. I really dig the song. Again, I'm not saying the one that was done on the 30th anniversary concert is the superior version. I'm sure most people would say the album version is the superior, but brings back memories in a lot of good ways.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you have such a good experience with this song. I think it's hard to tease out what you're saying from the words of the song. Um,
This is with the research that I did. This was what some critics had to say about that song. And hearing it, I can and basically I can see their point. That's what I'm saying. Especially with the I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
yeah, yeah,
So maybe not. It kind of speaking to Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowland. I mean, it's like this is what I saw when I heard those lyrics.
yeah,
You're not necessarily seeing that, but that's the beauty of it.
yeah, totally.
All right. Any thoughts on my back pages?
Um, Love it, of course. It's sort of a stream of consciousness, but tells a story. Maybe one line or two lines of each stanza, actually, if you take them out of the stanzas and put them all together, is a story. But a lot of it is surrounded by meaningful poetry. I mean, it's poetry.
Yeah, the only musician to ever win the Nobel Prize in Literature, I believe.
Yeah. So, for example, a self ordained professor's tongue, too serious to fool, sprouted out that liberty is just equality in school. Equality, I spoke the word, as if a wedding vow. But I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now.
Well, it also too. I mean, I did do some research as well. I studied up for this episode, folks. I guess like he had had a speech that he gave at like a political group, kind of expressing some of the same things, but a lot more bluntly around this time too, in terms of like this is not what I signed up for when I started making music type of deal.
Uh huh.
Because like you hear him in interviews, even now, he seems kind of somewhat flummox as to why people thought of his work so much as they do, I guess, if that makes sense, in terms of the, the protest type of anthems or yeah, that type of thing.
Right on.
All right, anyway. Well, if you don't have any more thoughts on my back pages, how about you dive into your number two?
Okay, let's see my number two. And these are in no particular order. Hurricane. So, a great story song about a boxer whose nickname was Hurricane.
Reuben Hurricane Carter.
Reuben Hurricane Carter, that's right.
Yeah.
And it is the story of his false imprisonment. And it is very informative. It's like reading a book about that incident. And I would have never known about this incident had there not been a Bob Dylan song about it. And probably the movie about him never would have been made if there was no Bob Dylan song about the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
These are so far, these two songs that I've talked about would never be played on the radio back in the day, right? It's also a really long song.
Well, Hurricane was released as a single.
Yeah, did they play it on the radio?
They did, yeah. I say this definitively because I did watch the Rolling Thunder Review documentary on Netflix. And they have a scene in the 70s that they filmed of Dylan at CBS, studios or the CBS Corporation, because that was his record label at the time, talking about releasing Hurricane as a single.
Oh.
And they even talked about in the footage that they filmed, the fact that it is slightly longer, but they were talking about the types of radio stations at that time, because in the 70s, on the radio at least, you had both FM and AM that played music, and FM was the new shiny toy, and FM was playing more unique stuff as well. So it was a time to where something like that could be released onto a general public that didn't quite know what they were going to expect,
Right. And it was the first song on the album.
Yes, I believe the album was
Desire.
Yeah.
On Desire.
Yep. I think I've talked about it on the show before, but the first time I heard this song was on an episode of Family Guy.
Really?
Yes. It was the episode that Stewie bet Brian that he could go to a high school as a high school student and become the most popular kid. And Brian said you're on. And so Stewie goes and becomes Mr. Cool Guy. And, finally it starts dating the hot chick in school because, he doesn't care. But that makes him hot, type of deal. But they go to make out lane. He gets in the car and she says, "Do you want to?" Basically, "Do you want to have sex?" She says that a little more eloquently, and Stewie's like, "Oh right," and then he pulls down his pants, and she's like, "That's a baby penis," and so Stewie ended up losing the bet. But what he did is Stewie at the end of the episode goes back and says, "Can I get one more kiss for old time's sake?" And the woman goes, "Sure." So he kisses her, and then like he rips off his clothes and goes, "Look, she's kissing a baby." And when and then he walks out, you just see the backside of him with his butt showing, and there goes the story of the hurricane. but
Oh,
But I was going to put this one on my list. I ultimately did not. There was another one that I feel I can uh, get some more meat off the bone in terms of stories we can tell. But that is one hell of a song, and what I love is the intensity too, because it sounded like he was pissed, as he should have been, and the fact, Reuben Hurricane Carter is interviewed in the documentary on Netflix and, talked about how, immensely important that song was for his journey, but how it made him feel,
uh-huh.
so.
How to make him feel? Seen?
Yes. Yeah. Because, like, at the time, too, the press was not on his side,
Uh,
Hurricane Carter side, and we're trying to make him out as someone that hated all white people. But what Rubin thought was important was that people like Bob Dylan were coming out with songs like Hurricane to get the story out. White people were helping him, and he was glad for that help, which was totally against the narrative that was being spun about him at that time.
right.
Yeah.
Great song, great politics.
Indeed, and it will be on the playlist that you will be able to access in our show description by heading to YouTube here. But now, how about I go on to my next choice?
Please do.
Yes, I've talked about this song plenty of times before. It's one I can actually play on guitar as well. We played it together. That's right, we played it together. I can thank Guns N' Roses for introducing me to this particular song. That I heard their version first before I realized Dylan wrote it, and once it was one of those deals too. Because this was the Guns N' Roses version was released before the anniversary concert, so this may have been one of the factors that maybe made me want to check out the concert as
Uh,
well. Finding out that it was Dylan, I mean, it'll be kind of the same reaction when I talk about another song. Let's put it that way. But the beauty of the song too is that at the end of the day, Dylan didn't really put too much effort into it, because if you watch the Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid movie, this song plays over the scene to where a sheriff whose wife he calls Mama watches him die. So the music is stating to you in song what is happening on the screen at the time they're both being played together.
ah,
So so easy in terms of writing it. So he didn't, this was not his another take on Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. Let's put it that way. He was just, let's get a song together, get it out, boom. But still great lyrics,
yeah.
still great emotion. Whether it be his simple version or other people's take on that particular song, if you like that take, of course. But just lots of emotions. I like, if I can play that song and still get that type of emotion out, at least sonically with the instruments I'm playing. That says a lot about the song, and to me, I have more respect for people that can pull off such emotion with simplicity compared to people that have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think subtlety is good, certainly.
It is, and it also can be added upon. That's the beauty of what music can do, and the fact that you have one artist that can create something so simple to where another artist will cover it and then add more and more and more that could still make it better. Not always, but in some cases it can be better.
Yeah.
There is that
Well,
caveat.
it can be transformed.
It definitely can. It definitely can. And I think we will talk about that at some point. But do you have any thoughts on knocking on heaven's door?
Well, so this song was ruined for me by Guns N' Roses right around the time that I got into Bob Dylan. And I had, I really liked GNR, Welcome to the Jungle. I was all about Welcome to the Jungle. But then when they did Knocking on Heaven's Door, I was just like,
Well, for them, I think the song was, when we did music reviews on the show, we talked about this more about the types of songs that are best made for the concert experience.
right,
And I think this is a traditional call and response type of deal. He was encouraging the audience to do that, and maybe you did it when you listen to the song at home, but you're just one person singing to a recording at that point.
right.
So I can understand to why that might not have worked at that particular time, but also too, if you were falling in love with Dylan and just liked Guns N' Roses, the response was probably also just, really.
Yeah. Really? Is that really what we're gonna do with the Bob Dylan song these days? Is
I know.
what I thought.
I know. They will do anything, but unless you have anything else about knocking on heaven's door, how about you go into your third choice?
I'm gonna. My third choice is The Times They Are a Changin'. This was one of his big hits.
And something that I just learned recently, and they only had a very brief clip about it in the movie. This is one he sang at the March on Washington. Isn't it criminal in a lot of ways that history books, when we were young, were not including this bit of information? That popular, it's not as a white savior type of thing. I'm not saying that, but they just tell you the civil rights story in piecemeal ways. They don't broaden it to show how there was support from different areas to, fight for civil rights at that particular time. And it seems like they're doing that to have a certain narrative. And why do I say that? Because, the narrative they say from Martin Luther King, who was about peace and all that stuff. But if you read Martin Luther King's books near the end of his life,
He was a radical.
he was radical. Yeah. And I think not including in the history books the fact that Bob Dylan was singing a song like this, kind of is another way to dilute the impact that Martin Luther King had and could continue to have if the history books weren't so fucking awful. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way that art can reflect what's happening in contemporary society. And, you know, it could be one of the reasons that Dylan's work didn't get so uh, challenged on this issue, on the times they are changing, was because people didn't. I mean, it had a chorus, the times they are changing. That could be about anything.
And I think that was, I mean, that's something that I've picked up from interviews from him when he's talking about that. Like, it's not that I think that he was not going into this particular song in terms of I'm not of he was intentionally writing about the times as they were at that particular time, but it wasn't as direct and blunt a folk song as something like Joan Baez would do.
Yeah.
It was more of a broader thing because Dylan at the end of the day was more about the music and not about the cause.
Well, and he progressed as a musician away from this, really away from political songs. And, we'll never know whether that's because he wasn't a very political person. But, what's interesting to me is with these early songs, these really popular early songs that were protest songs, what I saw Bob Dylan say about these early songs was that they were magic. So when people ask him, how did you write these songs? Where did these songs come from? He said, I don't know. They were just magic. Almost as they appeared full grown in his mind, rather than like writing being a even a process.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the movie did a great job of showing his writing process at that time. And, the D.A. Pennebaker movie, Don't Look Back,
Yeah,
showed a bit of it where Dylan wrote a lot of his lyrics on a typewriter and
yeah,
then, would play his guitar in the middle of the night and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, love the song. I like this particularly as I'm growing older. The line is just drawn, the cursed is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, and the present now will later be past. I think you appreciate that more and more as you age because you remember. I remember 1991. You know,
Yeah.
I was there. I was live. I was a teenager
The peace sign and everything.
with a peace sign and everything. And many, many people are alive on the earth that were not alive in 1991. And there are going to be fewer and fewer and fewer people. There'll never be more people that were alive in 1991. There will only be less people that were born in 1991. And eventually, we're going to look back on 1991 like the way I look back on the 50s. On the 50s. Not even the 60s, but the 50s.
Think about it like this: like '91 was the year Nirvana broke with Nevermind, and as I've discussed ad nauseum on this show, go back in the archives for plenty of examples. I talked about how much that impacted me. My oldest is 23. Like I, I was the music I was into at that particular time was more on the classic rock side. So I was getting into artists from the 60s and 70s already, but they were older musicians at that time. They were already established. And it is weird when new music becomes old.
Yeah.
Like how many classic rock fans have felt so ancient when a song that played when they were in high school is now being played on a classic rock station.
Well, that's happening to us now.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely. When I turn on the radio, they are playing
here's a gold.
classics from the 90s.
Here's a golden oldie from Paula Abdul.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yes. And I don't want to act like all the music that was contemporary. There was some great contemporary music in the 1990s.
A couple songs.
Couple songs.
It was okay.
It was okay. Uh, you know, a lot of good things happened in that decade musically.
And then it ended with Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
All right. Shall I go on with my next choice? Unless you have anything else you want to say about the times they are changing.
Nope.
All right. My next choice here, I can thank one Mr. Jimi Hendrix for introducing me to. It's from the John Wesley Harding album called All Along the Watchtower. Now, Jimi Hendrix's version is up there with like Johnny Cash's Hurt in terms of the cover song becoming much more well known than the original. And Bob Dylan himself has said, I like Jimi Hendrix's record of this, and ever since he died, I've been doing it that way. Strange how when I sing it, I always feel it's a tribute to him in some kind of way. Basically, Bob Dylan started doing a cover of a song that he wrote.
Yep.
Which is definitely interesting here. But it's also a great example of what I was mentioning before as well, because Dylan's take is a lot more simple. less instruments. It's a good sonic loudness, but not like Jimi Hendrix blaring out of your speaker type of loudness as well. But it also showed with Hendrix version, when you have the right person covering a Dylan work that knows how to add extra things to it that Dylan did not, put in initially, just how much richer that song can be, but also how much beautiful the original song is as well. And the original song has its own bit of intensity as well. I'm sure you would probably say it's one of his more commercial hits, not necessarily the sad-eyed lady of the lowland type of song, you know.
Yeah, I'd say that that formed, a significant part of his fortune.
Uh, as it should. I mean,
Yeah.
he deserves it. And yeah, I mean, what more can you say about All Along the Watchtower? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it is iconically a Jimi Hendrix song, um, especially after seeing the Woodstock footage of Jimmy playing this song. It was, it was just a wonderful song that he put his own mark on, like you were saying. So thank you for looking up all of that information. I don't really have anything to add.
Gotta love research, baby. All
Gotta
right.
love that research.
All right. How about you dive into your next choice here?
Okay, my next choice is If You See Her, Say Hello. Say hello.
Hello. No.
Hello. And this is a love song. So we haven't actually talked about love song yet, really. Have we?
No.
Okay, so it may be the only love song we have, in fact.
Yeah, you don't have lay upon my big brass bed.
I loved that one because it was like a Johnny Cash.
If I'm not mistaken, too, I know there is some Dylan song. I believe it may have been Lay Lady Lay that was supposed to be in The Graduate, but I guess he didn't submit it in time, so they had to use a different song.
Oh,
Yeah. I can research that later and tell you after we record. But anyway, go on about
if you
if you.
see her, say hello. Um, so heartbreaking, right? It's about a past love that you haven't seen in a long time, but you remember fondly. And then you run into somebody that knows them, and you know them through that person. And so, of course, when you run into them, the whole relationship comes back to you. But time has passed. Time has just been moving forward. And people don't do anything if they don't change. People change, people adapt. So she's in a different place, both physically, mentally, emotionally. Like she might be in Tangier physically. That also has an emotional meaning. Like that's pretty far away. Yeah, and just this regret almost of a loss. Of a loss of a love. And he's really blaming himself and pointing out his own behaviors that caused the breakup. So, I love this song because it evokes an emotion that is sadness. Not because I love sadness, because it does such a great job of evoking sadness. And that evocativeness really maybe is what he was trying to do, is like paint a picture and communicate an emotion. And he did it through beautiful poetry.
Yeah, Dylan with love songs was not going to be like Marvin Gaye or Barry White with love songs.
No.
Like it's more of talking about everyday life, but using music to make the emotions boil up inside of you like a pot of water on the stove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end, he says, she still lives inside of me. We've never been apart. Which to me is about the constancy. People exist in our mind as we knew them. They're not that way now. They might be similar. They might have the same sounding voice. They might look the same, but they're in a different place. And you're in a different place, and so your relation to them is different than it was. But what Dylan seems to be saying is that you can hold somebody in your mind in a static way, almost like a love is never destroyed kind of thought that is like have within us all love that we have ever experienced.
I think in a more simple way too, you could probably argue that he was saying it's okay to look on the positive things of the positive experiences from a past relationship as well, and still cherish those.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they made you you. These people were a part of your journey. They're not there anymore, and hence the sadness of the song. But you would be a much different person if they had not been in your life.
Yeah. Which, I could say about everyone.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've made plenty of ex-wife jokes, but if it weren't for the ex-wife, I would not be in Portland. I would not be here. We would
Yeah,
not be recording this.
that's
So
right.
that's right. All right.
You think you would have been still in Michigan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have any. I mean, would have loved to have gone on just like my own or something like that, but I would have, you know me, I would have like overthought it, and it would be like, oh my God, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. Like Grand Rapids, like I knew it, that was my place. So I probably would have still been in Grand Rapids. So, yay me.
And do you have a desire to go back to Grand Rapids?
No, like the last time I was back was when my mother died.
Yeah.
And to the point of the song, you can feel that same thing can happen to you when it comes to your cultural environment. My cultural environment growing up was in Grand Rapids, but going back in 2011, it wasn't anymore. Totally different place. There were a lot of the same things that were still there that had some great memories, but like if I drove back by my old house, I couldn't just walk in,
No.
and things like that. So yeah, like for me, like when in the day long in the future when I pass, like I hope I'm cremated, and it maybe would be cool if somebody took at least some of the ashes and dumped them somewhere in Grand Rapids.
Hey,
Something like that. But that's the extent of my desire to be back in Grand Rapids.
just when you're dead.
Basically, because like Portland is home. For as much as I've griped about it before in the past and will continue to gripe about in the future, like this is a unique town in a lot of ways. And unless it becomes more gentrified, I hope I don't necessarily leave to go anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't either.
Yeah, I get it. But how about I go on to my next choice,
Yes,
unless you have
please.
anything else you want to say?
Nope.
All right, this next one I only discovered recently because ever since we started going, had plans to go see A Complete Unknown. I dived a little deeper into some of his older work, including his first album, and there was one track on there that kind of blew my mind and also kind of pissed me off once I did a little digging. It was called "In My Time of Dying," and why is that a big deal, Tim? Because I grew up a Led Zeppelin fan. And one of the best songs that they did on their Physical Graffiti album was In My Time of Dying. Why is this a big deal? Because Led Zeppelin have a notorious reputation for ripping other musicians off. This was a song written in 1928 by one Blind Willie Johnson, and on the Dylan cover of it, you will see that it's credited to Blind Willie Johnson and all that stuff. But if you look under the songwriting credits for Physical Graffiti for In My Time of Dying, it just says traditional, arranged by the four members of the group. Because if you have writing or arranging credits, you get more money than just playing an instrument on an album.
Right.
And that just pisses me off. It's like, I still love that song. Don't get me wrong. I love Zeppelin's version. There's a lot of Led Zeppelin stuff that I do still like, but that's not being a student of music. Okay. I mean, I think of the Rolling Stones, and I've mentioned this before. They had an album in the late '90s called "Bridges to Babylon," and the big track off of that was the first hit. Has anybody seen my baby? And the chorus goes, "Has anybody seen my baby?" And before they released the album, somebody put two and two together and says, "You know what? That chorus kind of sounds like Constant Craving from Katie Lang."
Whoa.
And so instead of hoping no one would notice, the Rolling Stones made Katie Lang a songwriter on that song. So anytime you listen to that, Katie Lang is getting royalties
Hey.
from that. That is the way you do it. But no, you got to be dicks like Led Zeppelin, you know. And this is another reason why I do really love Dylan. I mean, he will always be in my greatest hits category of artists. Let's be clear, but he's a student of music. You know, like I mentioned earlier, with the folk people being more like Shakespearean actors. You know, he's done that deep dive in music. He actually does have a book out that he wrote that dissects like 20th century popular music.
Huh.
He's done his homework, people. But just if anything, give Dylan's version a shot. It's just him and a guitar, but he's also pretty damn good on that guitar playing it, and like he does have, at least for his major hits, I think back to Knocking on Heaven's Door. He does play it a little more simply later on in his career, but he shows in My Time at Dying that he does have some chops, because the blues is kind of different than folk, even though at that particular time they were being presented on the same stages for like variety shows and stuff like that. But in My Time of Dying, fuck Led Zeppelin. Listen to this version.
Yeah, so this is not a version that I know well, certainly. Even Bob Dylan's, like
Yep.
this as a Bob Dylan song, I'm not
No,
that
it was a
familiar.
cover. He did not write. Dylan did not write this. It was a cover. The first album only had two original songs that Bob
Right,
Dylan.
right, 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 right. But I haven't heard this song, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, um, so it's hard for me to say anything about it, of course.
All right. Well, then, how about you let us know your honorable mention list and then your last choice?
Okay, I have an honorable mention list because I could not, in good conscience, leave our listeners without the proper list of songs that they ought to listen to. And maybe they'll like some of these and maybe they won't, but it's a wider variety of songs. So, honorable mention, tell me if you know these. The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll.
I'm aware of it. The Polyphonic Channel actually has a video about that particular song where he uses it as an example of how Dylan wrote a protest song.
Ah,
So,
cool. Um, it is about a maid in a hotel that gets murdered by a rich person,
based on a true story.
and it's based on a true story, and it's a terrible story. And he does such a good job of conveying what happened. It's sort of like the hurricane in that way.
Yeah.
So that's one. The next is Lay Down Your Weary Tune. Do you know this one?
Yep.
It's an early one. Lay down your weary tune, lay down. Like it just kind of says that over again and over again. And, as a weary teenager, I love this song. Then you got Percy's song, which is Turn, Turn, Turn Again. Subterranean Homesick Blues.
That's a good one.
Johnny's in the basement.
Sleeping on a man. Yeah. Where, and this is another thing too. Like in '88, when In Excess released the "Need You Tonight" / Meditate video from their album Kick, the Meditate is them ripping off Subterranean Homesick Blues. But when I see this in '88, I'm like, In Excess, man, that's
That's
awesome.
so fucking cool.
Yeah, you guys are the coolest. You come up with that by yourself. No one else in history ever did that.
That's funny. Like the first time we see something, if we weren't around, that's what I'm saying about the oldies. Like somebody is hearing, some current artist version of,
You want to feel old?
yeah.
In our 20s, Shrek came out.
Whoa.
And the big hit off the Shrek soundtrack was the Smash Mouth cover of I'm a Believer. And that is now, as I believe, almost as old. That cover version today is as old as the original version from the Monkees was in the 2000s, if you think about it. I may be off by a few years, but not by much. So time flies.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Um,
All right, my next choice.
well, I had a couple of others on the honorable mention list.
On the next choice on the honor mention.
Farewell, Angelina. The Sky's Falling.
Never heard it.
It's great. Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You. You know that one?
No.
Also great. Tangled Up in Blue.
Tangled up in blue. Yeah, of course. That's a good one.
Made very popular by the Grateful Dead. Because
I
they did it as well.
I've not heard that one. No. But yeah, maybe someday we will do an episode about our favorite Dylan covers.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool.
Good.
But what is your last choice?
My last choice is Positively 4th Street. Such a good song. Um, who hasn't wanted to say to someone, fuck you? Like it's a big fuck you. It's on Highway 61 Revisited.
No. No. I did do research on this. This was a single released in between Highway 61 and a different the album after Highway 61, but it was not on Highway 61.
Well, there you go. It is listed as on Highway 61 in my book.
Well, I'm just telling you the research I did. I did find this out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's a big fuck you to somebody you used to know who you run into that you'd rather not see. And I guess I've felt that way about a lot of people in my life. So this has been an important song for me.
I get that. I mean, music can be that salve, if that's how you pronounce it, of course, that kind of can get you through tough times like that. I mean, think of how many breakup songs you listen to that you're like, fuck yeah, I agree with everything you say, screw the other person type of deal. So I definitely get that.
Well, it's a great one. If you haven't heard it, check it out.
Yes, it will be on the playlist that we provide, including the honorable mentions here, folks.
Great.
Yes. But how about I wrap it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, with a ditty you may have heard of. If you think about it, it probably will go down as probably one of the most important songs of the 20th century.
Yep.
Like a Rolling Stone.
Yep.
This is the only Dylan album I ever purchased in my 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe it or not, folks. Just one hell of a great song, and in a lot of ways, think of the impact that this had as well, because this is Dylan branching away from his folk roots, similar to what Beyonce did recently, going with her country album. Like, do you think Beyonce could have done a country album if it weren't for Dylan stating, I want to do something else? Now, I'm not saying Beyonce is going to be a country artist from here on out. I think it was a one and done for her. But without Dylan, I don't think she had that opportunity. And there are plenty of other examples that I'm sure you can name throughout history of artists that did take a chance on a different type of style that wouldn't have had that chance. I mean, the Beatles, for instance, were definitely influenced by Dylan in a lot of ways. And if you look at their music before they met Dylan in '64, and then after they met Dylan in '64, night and day. And just also too, like what I love about him is that, yeah, he is not a snob musically. Like, he has his taste, and most of his taste are generally stuff that can work for me, sometimes doesn't, but he's not a snob. Like, in a lot of ways, he is to music what Mark Twain was for American literature.
Huh.
In terms of being able to create these songs that can speak to people in such powerful ways, but write it in the voice of the common man. You know, like people aren't sipping brandy and like, what a droll comment. I mean, maybe they are with Dylan, but
I mean, he grew up in Hibbing, Minnesota, which is a rural mining town, I think, and never went to college. So
well learned. Let's put it that way.
brilliant.
Yes.
Obviously brilliant, but not like with the same advantages as other people.
That's funny because I just got reminded of another scene from the Rolling Thunder review, and you're gonna be like, I gotta see that now. But apparently, Bob Dylan met Sharon Stone when she was a kid
Whoa.
in the 70s. So she's interviewed and she talks about meeting him when she had a Kiss t-shirt on one time.
Uh-huh.
And he asked her, hey, do you like Kiss? And she wanted to sound smart. And she said, oh, yeah, I like the face paint. It's like kabuki. And then Dylan said, oh, like this person who does kabuki or this person who does kabuki? Like originators of the kabuki form,
Uh-huh.
And it just was awesome that, he knew that. But again, that's the type of mind that he had, and yeah, you don't need a college degree to be smart.
Oh God, no. Obviously.
Yeah, I agree, but
But I'm just saying, like, other people who had, I'm just saying, look what he did. Like, he's
yeah,
had a gift.
he had, and one other thing about this song too, like for the longest time, I thought that he wrote this as a knock against the Rolling Stones.
Oh.
Not realizing that when Bob Dylan was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I believe in 85 or 86, there is video of him and Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger singing like a Rolling Stone. And then in 95, because the Rolling Stones in the 90s, what they would do is release a studio album and then release a live album. But they wanted to flip the script somewhat because in the mid 90s, MTV Unplugged was a thing. And so they have a pretty good album out that I would recommend people check out called Stripped. And the lead single off of that was Like a Rolling Stone. And I've played that to you before, and it was one of those, that's nice, Tim. Turn it off.
Uh,
But definitely a legend. Like I've said before, he is easily one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century, one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, if only because of how he showed that if you feel it as an artist, you should go for it. Fuck if anybody else wants to follow you.
uh-huh.
Just follow that muse,
Yep.
and go from there. And I have a lot of respect for that because, again, he's not a snob.
Nope. And he liked what he liked.
He did.
And he was devoted to what he liked.
Yeah, one more tidbit from the Rolling Review. Like he talked about in the early 70s, and I told you this off air, but in the early 70s, he was in New York and got to see this new band in a club, and they had face paint and everything. And Dylan, saw the concert, enjoyed himself, and said, "I like that face paint idea. I'm gonna use it myself." And he did throughout the Rolling Thunder Review concert tours, and that band was Kiss. And
You feel totally justified.
in saying that he's not a snob. I respect the fact that for someone that learned, he had no issues seeing a Kiss show and having a good fucking time.
Yeah.
Because there are too many people that are learned, that are the, pinkies out while, sniffing, snorting brandy or something like that, that think that the,
Snorting brandy?
whatever they do, sipping brandy,
Sniffing brandy, maybe.
sniffs, or, I don't know, yeah.
Snort. I wouldn't snort brandy.
Me,
I'd advise against that.
I'm going to go into the bathroom later and look at myself in the reversifying glass, so, but yeah, what a legend. Not much more you can say, but listen to his music, right?
Absolutely listen to it. Listen to it as much as possible. Check out our playlist.
Damn right. Now, before we do anything else, how about we take a moment to let one of our friends in the podcasting world talk about their show?
Sounds great.
All right, hang tight, people.
Hi, I'm Dawn Brody, a comedian with a history degree and the host of the podcast HILF. History I'd Like to Fuck. Each episode, I am joined by a new guest who has brought me a subject from history that they want to know more about. Then I hit the books, I dig deep in the annals, and stimulate. We've covered Frankenstein, Houdini, Joan of Arc, Pompeii, the Salem witch trials, right? Ugh. Join us and find out for yourself that history is a party and everybody's coming.
All right, welcome back. Before we wrap things up for the week, we do want to start off with a correction.
That's right. We need to go back and correct things that we get wrong.
Indeed.
And I use we loosely to mean me.
No, I'm very much included in this mistake because I perpetuated it and threw gas on the fire. But back in episode 389, I think that was the episode where we talked about our favorite film scenes. You were talking about a movie where a guy is dating a woman that this guy's friends don't particularly care for, and they try to break up that couple, and you called it Saving Silverman. And the movie that you and I ended up actually discussing was not Saving Silverman, but it was Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Because you were talking about the movie with Russell Brand in it, and I mentioned Jason Segel being in that movie. That was Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Now, both of these films have very, very similar plots. So it's not like you were talking about E.T. and you met Citizen Kane.
Right. In both stories, the friends hate the girlfriends.
Yeah. The Saving Silverman one, I think, was more of the wacky 2000s comedies. It was an early Jack Black role.
Yep.
But just simple mistake. So we wanted to put that out there.
You know what? That makes me want to watch them over again. Both of them.
Okay. You will have a good time because we got Netflix now.
Yeah. So you're not going to join me?
Who knows? Maybe I will one day.
Okay.
But one other thing I wanted to talk about here, and I know as we record this, the episodes, when we actually release this, will be in a few weeks. So this is talking about something that's a little on the older side, but I really enjoyed the experience. It was the teaser to the new Superman movie. So excited for it now. It's written and directed by James Gunn, the creative mind behind the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by stating that of all the Marvel movies, it seems like those were the ones that connected with you the most.
Yes, those were the ones that I liked.
Yeah.
Not that I hated the rest of them,
of course.
But I got lost in them. I didn't like the drama-iness of it because it's like so unbelievable. Like, I know that didn't happen. Whereas if I watched a drama, about somebody, I can suspend my disbelief.
That reminds me of a Family Guy gag. I think it was Family Guy, or maybe it was The Simpsons. It was Family Guy, but they were talking about, like, somebody tried to be like the Hulk and exposed themselves to gamma radiation, and then it cuts to them at the doctor, and the doctor's like, no, this will not turn you into the Hulk. You have cancer. I mean, it was a cartoon, so you can have a laugh. I don't think anybody would really do that, but this is the start of what they are calling the DCU. This Superman film has to be big for any future movies to come out. It's going to be a different take than what we've experienced over the past 20 years with Zack Snyder's super serious Superman's breaking necks take, which Superman doesn't kill. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what Zack Snyder was doing was just wrong on so many levels. But we'll leave it at that. But when it comes to a teaser trailer has to set the tone for a movie. I mean, a teaser trailer is not necessarily going to give you like story bits. They want to hype you up. They want to give you just a glimpse of the movie, and opens up with Arctic tundra, and then Superman crashes down on the ground. He's got the red trunks back. That is cool. You're like, okay. But got the red trunks back, and then John Williams Superman music being played on electric guitar starts playing, and that's when it starts going into little clips from the movie, like the awkward Clark Kent showing up to the Daily Planet The woman who plays the marvelous Mrs. Maisel on the Amazon show, I believe her name is Rachel Brosnahan. If that is not correct, I'm sorry, but I, the the moment I heard that she was cast in this movie as Lois Lane, I was like, they fucking got it.
Yeah.
Because like because when it comes to actors and actresses, there are a number of actors that can memorize the lines and then repeat them. That's why Arnold Schwarzenegger has a career. But Arnold Schwarzenegger can't play Hamlet, right? And it takes a certain type of actor to take a stock character like that and make it more human. And I think she's going to knock it out of the park. But the part that really got to me was when the guitar music was like leveling off. You saw, and this summer, Superman is like injured on the ground. He whistles, and then you see this big cloud of snow, drums going, pounding really hard, and it goes, it begins. And then Crypto the Superdog shows up. Like from the comics, like they're embracing Crypto the Superdog. That's another thing too, because Crypto's going to be in there. James Gunn has already talked about the fact that this will not be an origin story. Superman is already established. Lex Luthor is already established. But after Crypto's there and Superman's like, home, take me home. And Crypto takes Superman's cape in his mouth and runs really fast with Superman trailing behind. You get shots of like battles that are going to happen in the movie. And I loved how some of the scenes were either taken from comic book characters or other aspects of Superman lore, because they have this one little quick scene of like buildings that are falling over, but they're falling over in the same way that they did in the Fleischer cartoons from the 40s. And just the music as well. Just sometimes I have to watch a trailer at minimum 50 times to start getting it.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I did for this instance right here. And I have no problem saying that. Anyway, that's why I have the social life I do, I guess. But just the music was just, once the slow, somber guitar take on the Superman theme hits, it goes into like full orchestra. And then near the end of the trailer, you start hearing people in the background chanting, Superman, Superman. And like, my Superman is back. That's
Nice.
awesome. They're also going to bring back, they're also going to have a different Green Lantern in this movie. They're bringing the 80s Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, played by Nathan Fillion. And the only way I can describe Guy Gardner is, imagine me on my crabbiest day with superpowers.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So I'm
You're clear of you.
exactly. Yeah, get the fuck out. Anyway, within the first 24 hours of this trailer being debuted, it already broke a record. It's the number 5 most viewed trailer of a new movie within the first 24 hours ever. Every single movie above that made at minimum $1 billion. So lots of rich people are going to be made a lot richer because of this. But Superman has been around for decades. He's the 20th century Paul Bunyan, if you think about it.
Yeah.
An American tall tale. And Superman was there for like my grandfather in World War II. Comics were huge with soldiers back in the day because a lot of them didn't even necessarily know how to read. So the comics were teaching them how to read. Because if you look back in American history at that particular time, that was before the big, like interstate highway system that only happened in the 50s. And, with the education system being what it is, that all depended on where you lived. But you go back to the 70s, of course, we were going through the end of Watergate and the end of Vietnam, but then Superman the movie, go back into the 50s too. Think of how many kids grew up on George Reeve with Superman. Just like, that character has always been, for me at least, a symbol of hope. And even in fictional form, we need that now more than ever. So this is going to be a movie, like, I'm going to book tickets for the very first showing. Like, this is going to be, I believe, like I've told you about the experience I felt when I saw Avengers Endgame. I think the audience that is there that night, the very first time, is going to give the same type of vibe, and it would be an awesome experience to be there.
That's so cool. I'm so happy for you about that.
Yeah, you're going to enjoy it.
You're going to have a great time. And the thing is, you don't want to go with somebody who's not equally as excited as you.
Exactly, because, yeah, I mean, if a person is not excited, they could be looking around like, why are all these jackasses clapping?
Or they could like fall asleep, and wouldn't that make you feel weird? Like,
I know, but again, my Superman is back.
yay!
All right, any other thoughts you want to tell our friends at home, or do you want to wrap this up for the week?
Let's wrap it up. We gotta keep something in the tank.
Yes, for what? I don't know. Anyway, each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
Tangled up in blue. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.